Hello, I'm Michael Howe with Gluware. In this demo, we're going to cover how Gluware can automate the execution of a network discovery to see exactly what devices are connected to your network. Then, after that discovery, you could then import them into Gluware for lifecycle automation management. So in this demo, we're going to be using Gluware 5.4, which introduced some pretty significant changes to network discovery that we will cover. So let's get started. Here I am in my Gluware instance. I am using our demo instance, which is available for our test drive. If you would like to kick the tires on Gluware yourself, go to gluware.com and register for our test drive. Network discovery is part of Device Manager. So in my app navigation, I'm going to navigate into Device Manager, but one of the changes you'll see right away with 5.4 is that network discovery is available right from the app nav menu and the second tier of Device Manager. So you can navigate directly that way now. However, let's go into Device Manager, the device view, and I want to show you the second way you'd navigate in. When you're in Device Manager, you have Device Explorer as your lower pane view. One of the changes we've made is that network discovery is no longer just a direct action from your action bar. It now has its own view because, again, of the changes we've made. So let's go ahead and use this way to navigate in. One last comment is that the main view navigations are also available from the lower bar if you have that turned on. So you can turn on or off that particular bar, but that's another way to, again, navigate into network discovery. So let's use this method right here and jump on in. So again, with the changes made in 5.4, there's two big changes. One of those is that network discovery is now plan-based. So you build a plan and then you execute the plan. So it's very similar to the workflow in OS Manager, where you build a plan for OS upgrades or downgrades, and then you execute that plan. Having it plan-based has numerous advantages, the main being that you can build a plan and you can reuse that plan. You also have the ability to import and export and do other things with it, but the reusability of the plan is quite useful. So let's jump into network discovery and more of the changes here. So from my network discovery view here, my plan explorer, I have options, new options here in the actions bar. One of those is going to be to add a discovery plan. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll call it, okay, I'm naming this plan discovery demo-crawl, and I'll hit create. You'll see why in a minute here. So in the plan, you now have two modes of discovery. The neighbor crawl, which was our previous mechanism. This mechanism, Gluware accesses a particular device, and then from that device, we look at neighbors, and then we essentially hop through the network neighbor by neighbor, providing a more intelligent way of discovering exactly what network devices are connected to your network. The new method introduced, which I'll go through in the next phase of the demo, is the subnet scan. This is, let's say, a more legacy approach to discovery. Just adding a subnet into your discovery product, in this case Gluware, and then Gluware just looks at every IP in that subnet and then attempts to discover it and see if it's a network device. So let's first cover network crawl, since it is the, let's say, more intelligent way, maybe more efficient way of scanning, and this is the method that was already supported. One of the things I'll mention is that you do put a pre-seeded device into here. Gluware accesses that, and then based on that, we're looking at layer 2 neighbor information. So we can search the network and look at the neighbors based on ARP, direct connected neighbors, Cisco Discovery Protocol or CDP, and link layer discovery protocol. So you can use any of these protocols to determine what's connected to the network and then therefore attempt to SSH into those devices and complete discovery. So if I give myself a little more room here, instead of just typing in an address of the seeded device, I am going to select a seeded device. In this case, I'll select my hub 1 that's here and hit OK and then back. So now I've seeded my scan with a single device. Again, in the options, these are the same in terms of you can perform an exhaustive search, which is going to keep searching until no more neighbors exist, or you could limit the depth of the search. This is kind of essentially by hop count. So if you think about I'm SSHing into a hub, if I just have hub and spoke, well, then the depth of my network is only 2 because it's hub and spoke network. If I had a multi-tiered network that was, say, 4 tiers, I could limit the search to, say, 3 tiers. But essentially, limiting the search will save time in the scan, and you can have it more focused on the networks of the devices that you're trying to scan. If you have a more exhaustive search and you're not necessarily intending to discover those areas of the network, it's just going to take a lot more time and not give you the information you want. So I have my device here. One thing about this particular network is I do access the devices in my network through a proxy. So I'm going to actually say to use this initial device as a proxy to these devices, because the actual range of devices I won't have direct access to. So that's basically all I need in terms of being required. I do have obviously the name. I have an optional description. We have the support for multiple zone engines. Zone engines are a way of distributing Gluware for larger deployments and networks. This is a lab network, so I only have a single zone engine, so I don't have to configure that. But let's say I was wanting to rediscover devices in my Chicago data center, and I had a zone engine there. I could tell Gluware to use the Chicago zone engine, or the Dallas zone engine, or the New York zone engine. It's just a way of putting Gluware closer to the devices it's going to be accessing. Scrolling down here, I've already done my seeded device. I do need, the credentials of what credentials I'm going to be accessing. So you can add more than one. These are coming from our credential store, so these are not the actual credentials, but you can say, what type of credential and then what credential am I accessing. This drop-down list is coming from our credential store. So these are not the actual credentials. You'd have to go into settings and your org, set up your credentials, and then those are here. For this demo, I will just keep this particular credential there. And then exclusions. So if you want to exclude specific devices, specific host names, IP addresses, blocks of IPs or ranges, you can define those exclusions here, and then Gluware will essentially not try to SSH in and discover them, since they will be on the excluded list. So I'm not going to be doing that today. So that's all I need to do here for discovery. In terms of, this is again the neighbor crawl method we had already previously supported. I'm going to save this discovery, and I have the option of scheduling it, so having our scheduler kick off when that time is determined, or run now. So let's go ahead and run it now. When you run it now, the same experience happens in terms of it tells you it's running. We do suggest you navigate, if you're using it interactively or in real time, you can navigate over to the results view and see it in action. So Gluware is actively SSHing into this seeded device. It's going to look at, in this case, all the ARP neighbors, and then basically indicate, what is the status of the discovery. So we'll give it a few minutes here and let it complete. Okay, so the discovery has now completed. And if I look at the details here, I have identified a number of devices through this search. If I scroll over, I can see that the majority of these devices are known, meaning they're in the inventory. And I have 2 devices that have errors. Usually when you have errors, they're going to be related to either it is a non-supported operating system that Gluware doesn't have the ability to discover, or it's a credential error. To determine that, you can double click into the log, and the log gives you a lot of information here. So in this case, the remote host is not responding. So we could look at this and determine, might be something I want to look into in terms of my network and my results. This next one here, if I look into and I double click on it, so this one is indicating it doesn't have the proper credential, because in this case, it's an authorization fail. So we didn't have the proper authorization. So this is a common occurrence when executing discovery. So I'd have to look at that type of device, figure out what type of credential are required for it, and add that to the list, and then it would be successful. So if I jump back to details here, again, here are your details. You have a lot of information here. A lot of our customers rerun discovery on a regular basis for security purposes, or they are expanding their network and trying to understand what devices to bring into Gluware for management or lifecycle management of the automation. So now that I have results here, I can download these out in a spreadsheet. I also have other views here in terms of the discovery summary. So as I run multiple discoveries, I can see all the details here, as well as I have a detailed log. So the log will tell me exactly what happened with the discovery and what happened from a text summary level. And then I have a log view here as well, just indicating exactly what the Gluware engine was doing. So that's kind of a quick summary in terms of that first method. So let's close out this discovery window. And here in our plan, we're going to add another discovery, and we'll call it Discovery Demo Subnet Scan. Okay, so as mentioned, this is the new mode that we are supporting now from a discovery standpoint, that it is executing a subnet scan. So I'm going to add a range, and here you can put an IP range or an IP block in. You can put the start and end of that block. I am in a particular lab network, and so I know what IPs are actually available, although you're going to see a little bit of limitation of what I'm able to show you here, but this Gluware engine, where I have it installed, does have reachability to this range. So I want to check this range for any devices that I want to bring into management. So I click OK. And again, you can add multiple ranges to your list, and Gluware will execute a discovery across each one of those subnet ranges. Then you have your method, so SSH or Telnet. It is important to note that Gluware is using the popular Nmap open source library. We will check to see if that port is available before we attempt the SSH. This does speed up the process. So basically, if the port's not open, we're not even going to attempt the SSH and wait for a timeout and go through that. Basically, it'll just speed it up and move along. Again, we do need credentials. I'm going to just put in another credential here in this use case here. So you do need that. And then exclusions. Again, if you want to exclude hosts, IPs, a range, a block, you can save all of that and configure that. One of the things that, again, I find very useful here is that when users go through the effort of defining ranges and defining credentials and defining exclusions, one of the things that you do now have is the ability to import and export out these scans. And so if you're going to use them in another system, or you're changing things with Gluware, you do have the ability to save these out of the system, import them back in, share them if other users may need them. That is a nice enhancement. So here we are. We have our plan named. We don't necessarily need a description, already covered. We have a single engine zone. We're doing a subnet scan on this subnet range using SSH. I have my credential configured. I'm not using exclusions. So I save, and I can schedule or run now. And again, for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and run it now. I will just, let me quickly show you what schedule looks like. If you do schedule it, it puts it into the scheduler. You can have it one time or repeating. You could have automatically add new devices to inventory. You could have options like email notifications. So there are additional things you can do with the scheduling ability here. Closed out the window. If you ever do that, you can just double click back on the window to open it up. So again, we have our subnet range configured, our credential, no exclusions, and I'm going to run it now. When running, can view the discovery results, and we'll wait here till the discovery completes. Okay, so the discovery has completed, and it is essentially as I expected, which is it did find all these IPs that did respond. However, using Nmap, we determined that the majority of these are not hosts that we have access to. In fact, if we just pick on any one of these, in fact, I know this particular device is what I selected, and I open up my log on it. Why wasn't Gluware able to complete the device discovery is that as we access it, we actually identified it to be a Linux-based shell, And this is not a networking device, it is a server. And so we have a fail or an error, and it's an unsupported platform. Gluware currently isn't inventorying Linux hosts into the inventory. So in this particular detail on this subnet I ran, it is all virtually servers and it is not networking devices. So as I go to my plan, none of these are devices that Gluware is going to discover and then import in for management. But I did want to give you an example of how a subnet-based scan could be run. If they were networking devices, these could then be imported into Gluware. So that basic completes the demo of the network discovery in terms of the changes. Just to complete the thought on, once you have these built, you have them in your plan. You can run them again from here. You can add new plans like we've done. You can edit existing plans. You can clone plans. You can import and export them. We use JSON formatting for the plans. One last quick thing to cover is that there's another way to run these plans. So if I navigate into Network RPA into my workflow library, and I'm going to create a new workflow called discovery demo. Next. I'll keep this private for now. Next. So all we need to do is say network. We can search across all our tasks. We have a task called Run Network Discovery. This task has been updated in Gluware 5.4. So when I drag it over and bring it in and I click on it, now instead of just running the single defined discovery that I had in my system, now I have plans. And so now I can choose the plan that I want to run. So if I want to run the network crawl again, I can do that here and hit apply. So that is configured. And then I like an email notification when it's done. So I'm going to notify the job runner, which happens to be me. Discovery is complete. I'll just keep this really basic and simple. Apply. So I'm just going to run network discovery and then send a notification. So we save this workflow. We validate the workflow. It's all valid. And let's go ahead and run it. So when I kick this off, I can see it's running here. So I'm running my discovery. If I navigate back over to network discovery, I can see the subnet crawl is running again. If I double click in and go to my results, I can see that running. So again, just another way that you can make this very repeatable, and you can use it in your procedures that you are building in Network RPA. So with that, this concludes the demo of the enhanced network discovery capability introduced in Gluware 5.4. Thanks for your time and attention.